Boom, we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Nolan Hawkeye Anthony YouTube channel. And I thank all of you for being here, wherever you may be, and of course, however you may be listening. I'm continuing on the positional preview for the 2025-2026 football season for the Iowa Hawkeye football team. And tonight is when I'm recording this, but whenever you guys see this, of course, it will be, of course, the offensive line. That will be the entire offense that has been previewed. But an aside, before we dive into that, is there's actually, where I live, there's actually a staggering amount of Big Ten, specifically Iowa and Nebraska fans, which I have mentioned on numerous occasions. And there's these older guys that go to the same gym that I go to, and there's actually a few other people there that are Nebraska fans. So anytime I see them, you know, we have a gym conversation. And one of the things that came up was just kind of reviewing the schedule, and it was brought up that, of course, Ohio State is playing Texas, and this was on the shoulders of me saying that I wished that even though Iowa State is preseason ranked this year, I wish that Iowa played other teams. I wish that they played Iowa State on a every other year basis. Now, I have said on numerous occasions that perhaps my opinion on it is biased, just like probably yours is as well. I don't live in the state of Iowa, so I don't have the same connection and desire to tell my Iowa State friend that Iowa beat them this year. Like, it doesn't do the same thing for me as it probably does for in-state Iowa Hawkeye fans and, well, definitely Cyclone fans. This is probably the case for all Cyclone fans. But I do think it gives me a unique perspective. I'm not, like, against Iowa playing Iowa State at all. Like, I'm okay with them playing them. I just wish it was on like a every other year basis, especially if Iowa is going to take the approach of, well, we're only going to play one Power 4 level quality team in our preseason, or not preseason, but non-conference schedule. So, I've said this before. This is not a new take of mine. I just thought it would be interesting to bring up. Again, I realize that there's a lot of fans that probably feel otherwise, and that's fine. I would like Iowa to play like Wisconsin did and Alabama, Notre Dame at Soldier Field. Hell, even if they played like a Kansas State or Oklahoma State, just to change it up, make it more of a marquee game. But it's nice that Iowa State is ranked coming into this year, because the problem with Iowa playing Iowa State every year is most of the time, statistically speaking, Iowa State is not a good football program. And so when Iowa beats them, it's really not that big of a deal. But when they lose to them, it is a pretty big blip on their resume. So anyways, but let's dive in to the offensive line, shall we? This is probably the best position group coming into this season. Again, heading into the season, things might change. There's some other position groups that I would not be surprised in the least if they took massive leaps forward. Coming into the year, I would probably say that it's the offensive line, defensive line, and perhaps the secondary. I think the secondary and running backs group are probably the secondary running backs and tight ends are probably in the same group. From a speculative talent perspective, I would be willing to throw the quarterbacks into that group as well. But, for me, the quarterbacks group and the wide receiver group are more in the grouping of we need to see them prove it. No speculation. We just need to see them prove it. So, but just looking at it from production, depth, talent level, projected NFL caliber talent, the offensive line is the best. And like I said, I would probably say the defensive line is the second best, and that's good. That is, if you are going to be successful in the Big Ten, you need to have success up front, especially if you're going to be a team built like Iowa is. And it's actually shocking the amount of success that Iowa was able to have with the lackluster performances of the offensive line and run game and even the pass game, pass blocking, pass pro, from the offensive line as a group. Now, Iowa has had guys, here or there that have been NFL caliber offensive linemen. Tyler Linderbaum. I would say outside of the last 2 years, probably the best offensive line group collectively would have probably been the year that had Alaric Johnson and Tristan Wirfs manning both sides of the tackle positions. So this offensive line group legitimately has 2 NFL level right off the bat talents. These are 2 guys that, quite frankly, probably would have been drafted had they left and forgone their final year of eligibility. Logan Jones had the extra COOF year, otherwise known as COVID year. They would have been drafted. The center position is really a more like need-oriented position as far as the draft goes. If a team really needs it, it's good to land a guy out of the draft that you can kind of build from and have, for the foreseeable future, 5-6 years down the line. So on the top end, I think teams are willing to go and get like a Tyler Linderbaum in the first round if there is a need to do so. But it's not like other positions where the need is not necessarily there, but they're willing to take it because it's such an important position group that they're taking best available. And so, but either way, I think Logan Jones, he would have impressed in the weight room. He's a phenomenal weight room guy. I think his journey has been a little bit different from Tyler Linderbaum's, but in a lot of ways very similar. I think Tyler Linderbaum has had, to this point, more prominent success. Ergo, he was a first-round draft pick, and is still, currently one of the best centers in the entire NFL. But Logan Jones, I think, would have been drafted. I wouldn't be surprised if he was able to catapult himself all the way to the 3rd round based off of his testing numbers. But anywhere from 3rd round to 5th or 6th round. That's probably there's so much unknown there, especially because the NFL really you do have the opportunity, because it is a league that is so prevalent on athleticism and physical prowess. You really do have the opportunity, if you do well enough in that category, to improve your stock immensely. We're talking multiple rounds if you do well enough. So, but I think that's a fair bet. And then Jennings Dunker, I've seen places that said he would have went as high as the 2nd round. And who knows, based on the testing numbers, and him being young, teams might have been willing to look at him in the 1st round as more of like a late 1st round developmental piece due to the lack of experience, but the high upside. So these two guys are the anchors, and when you're talking about Iowa's offensive line group, you have to start there. I think Jennings Dunker is a cool story. Both these guys have cool stories. Logan Jones was a 4-star defensive tackle prospect. He played. He was a wrestler, super good in the weight room, as I said. He dealt with some injuries early on in his Iowa career. Honestly, I mean, he's just a good football player. I guarantee, had he stuck it out on the defensive line, he probably would have been able to work into the rotation. Now, with that said, he still is a bit undersized at 6'2", 275 pounds. If you're below 6'3", I'd say you need to have more weight, or you need to be super athletic, which he was, especially if you're going to play the defensive tackle position. But those guys are kind of like tweeners, where they're not full-blown D tackles, like anchor D tackles, but they're also not outside guys. And he made the switch. They saw a lot of the same comparisons and skills, skill traits that Tyler Linderbaum had, and they flipped him over, which all you guys know, and he's had some strong success. Whereas Jennings Dunker, he came to Iowa as a high 3-star prospect. He committed to Iowa early in the process. His teammate was a defensive tackle who was also committed. I think it's Leno Winslow in the state of Illinois. I'm trying to remember who his teammate, what his teammate's name was. He had a grade of a 88, which is, really strong. I mean, this was a really strong class, purely just examining it from a out of high school perspective. Some guys are no longer here, unfortunately, or are no longer playing football. But, you have Carson Sherrar, who was a late get and a developmental piece, a guy who was seen as a Division I basketball prospect. Jeff Bowie's no longer with Iowa. Brody Brecht, of course, was a huge get over in-state Iowa State. But he chose to play baseball, which obviously, has worked out well for him. Justice Sullivan, I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with his story. He's had some health issues and family issues. There was Arlen Bruce, Bo Stevens, Keegan Johnson, Joe Labus, Max Llewellyn, Cooper DeJean, a.k.a. Cooper DeJean, Connor Colby, and then of course the anchor of this was top 100, top 75 offensive line prospect David Davikoff, who was a 96, one of the highest rated offensive line targets, but basically as soon as he got to Iowa, he had a career-ending injury and is no longer playing. So, this class finished ranked 24th. As far as high school numbers go, they had multiple 4-star prospects. They had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 4-star prospects, including Jennings Dunker, who was not a 4-star, but one of the prospects, Jeremiah Pittman, was one of them. I don't think that this class yet has lived up to the billing of the 24th ranked class, but they've been solid, and a lot of these guys are key contributors still to this day. I've said this is an aside. I know we're talking about the offensive line group, but I've said for a long time that any given recruiting class, you should be looking for 10 to if you're lucky 15, but that's pretty unheard of. 10 guys from each recruiting class that at some point in their career, whether it's their final year, whether they're a multi-year starter, whether they only contribute on special teams, whatever the case may be, that are contributors to your football program. So, but the other player that they got was defensive tackle Isaiah Bruce, and of course, he's no longer at Iowa. Jennings Dunker, had that connection from his teammate who was committed from the class before him, and he shut down his recruitment really early on, committing to Iowa. Let's talk about some of the other guys, and then, actually, let me start here as well. The guys that Iowa lost are guys that played many games, and it was nice to see all of their snaps, all of the games that they have played, especially with the new offensive scheme, which before was holding them back from Tim Lester, culminate into a successful year. But, Connor Colby is off to the NFL. Mason Richmond off to the NFL, and Nick DeYoung. Those were three guys that had played many games across multiple seasons for the Iowa Hawkeyes. I mean, Connor Colby was basically a starter for his entire career at Iowa, with ebbs and flows. His career did not go in the trajectory that I expected, but still, a hell of a football player. If you can make it to the NFL, you're a hell of a football player. So those are the key members that Iowa lost. Some of the other guys that round out would be Bo Stevens, Cade Piper, redshirt sophomore. You have Jack Dotzler. You have Trevor Lauk, a.k.a. Trevor Lauk. You have Leighton Jones. Michael Mislinski is in his senior year. And you have Kanan Leonard, the big behemoth, 6'8", 6'9" guy. So those are the main contributors. The other contributor or expected contributor is Ferris State transfer Bryce George, who almost certainly is going to, be a part of Iowa snaps in this upcoming year, either special teams or as a full-blown starter. As far as the starting offensive line goes, I think Iowa's offensive line is pretty much guaranteed at 4 spots. Jennings Dunker at one of the tackle spots, most likely right tackle. Whether he plays that in the NFL, who knows? Which, by the way, I didn't mention. The cool thing about his story is he was the Hay Bell winner multiple times. And I remember hearing his name because it's always highlighted, this festival that goes on. I'm not too familiar with it. And I remember thinking to myself, dang, it'd be nice if this translated to the football field. I mean, this guy obviously has power. And sure enough, it did. And I even remember at the time thinking to myself, it's just a matter of time before this guy puts it all together and has success on the football field. But I think if I had to guess, have an educated guess, I would say Jennings Dunker is going to be the starting right tackle. I don't think he'll move over to left tackle, although it is possible. Iowa at the end of the day, they want, and I think it's changed a little bit with Tim Lester and George Barnett, but by and large, their philosophy under Kirk Ferentz has been not necessarily position-oriented across the offensive line, but who are the best 5 offensive linemen that we have, and let's put them, accordingly across the offensive line. So rather than, who's the best right tackle, who's the best right guard, who's the best center. Things have changed a little bit, but still, just that little caveat, I would not be surprised if Iowa did move Jennings Dunker as a need because he is that talented in order to get somebody else in there who might be better served at right tackle, And so even though Jennings Dunker probably is better at right tackle, still they don't have anybody that can play left tackle, so they move him over because he's still super talented, and they, slide the next best offensive lineman at the right tackle position. So I don't think that that's going to happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if it did. Cade Pieper, a.k.a. Cade Piper, is going to be the right guard. He's a great story, great find out of the state of Nebraska. Not surprised at all. Multi-sport athlete, unheralded guy, under the radar guy. He's basically seen success immediately upon his arrival at Iowa. Again, a weight room favorite. I mean, this guy only had a grade of an 85, and he did play defensive line as well. A lot of schools were recruiting him as a defensive lineman, but that's what I love about Iowa is they look at football players and they're creative. They look at a guy like this and they go, yeah, sure, this guy might be a Division I prospect, especially for FCS level teams, maybe some group of 5 level teams. But he's not a Big Ten caliber defensive line. But he could possibly be, with that athleticism, a Big Ten level offensive lineman especially if he can bring that tenacity. Logan Jones, 100% is going to be the center. He was labeled as one of the top 100 freaks in I think it's Athlon Sports, whatever publication does it. I think there's a few that give out a freaks list, list of talent for Iowa. Preston Reese was listed, linebacker. Logan Jones was listed, and there was one more that was listed. It may have been Jennings Dunker. In fact, I think it was Jennings Dunker. I do think Bo Stevens will start at left guard, and then really it just kind of boils down to left tackle. It's coming down to Trevor Lauk, a.k.a. Trevor Locke, and Jack Dotzler and Bryce George. I think at this point, Trevor Locke looks to have the inside track. Lauk did get the start at the Iowa Kids Day practice, but this is an excerpt. George Barnett said at the Hawkeyes Media Day on Friday that Iowa wasn't working that trio exclusively at left tackle. Instead, it has been rotating the number 1 left tackle reps and also mixing in some reps at guard too. So, it sounds like they're not even positive that, when it comes to those 3 guys, that their position is tackle. And this is what I'm talking about the best 5. This is definitely a mindset that Iowa has. It says, with senior Bo Stevens still coming back from a concussion, ensuring that all 3 continue to get reps across the board is important. So that's definitely another aspect. They might just be trying to, get reps anywhere on the offensive line. Dotzler operated as the backup left tackle, and George as the backup left guard in Kids Day. So, I think based on that, purely, it seems like it's down to Dotzler and Lauk, probably Lauk, aka Trevor Locke, possibly leading the charge, but anything's possible. Again, I would not be surprised if they kicked Jennings Dunker over to the left side and moved. Maybe just hypothetically, Bryce George over to right tackle, because that's where he's most comfortable, and that's where, he is at his best, and therefore can give Iowa's offensive line the best chance of success. That's the thing about offensive line. It's yes, you can have talent individually, but coming up with the best group collectively is always tough. Either way, just to wrap this video up, this offensive line has a ton of talent. Locke, aka Trevor Lauk, was extremely highly regarded coming out of high school. High 3-star, low 4-star prospect. Out of the state of Indiana, had a ton of offers, power 4 level offers. It was a big win for Iowa. So if he's ready to go, that's really going to set Iowa up nicely for the next couple of years at the tackle position. I don't really see any other position. Maybe one of the guard positions. It is possibly a position that could be won by somebody that's not necessarily expected. But I think at this point, it is Stevens and Pieper that are going to man those two positions. We haven't heard anything otherwise. So, that's good news. That is good news. I fully expect this to be a really good year for Iowa. That's why I have almost zero concerns with the Iowa run game, especially with a mobile quarterback in Mark Gronowski this year. This is why I'm extremely optimistic about this Iowa football team. It all starts up front. And if this offensive line group has been ranked as a top 10 position group in the entire country. Okay, top 5 by some publications. The defensive line has also been ranked top 10 position group nationally. So, there's a lot of high expectations, and understandably why, when you have, two guys that are definitely going to be NFL draft picks. And, the other guys, who knows what can happen with Bo Stevens. The guy has the athleticism, has the size. I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a clip when he was coming out of high school of him catching passes as a tight end. I mean, the guy can definitely move. In fact, I was kind of surprised that he didn't end up playing tackle, even though Iowa did try and work him out there early in his career at Iowa. So, I'm extremely optimistic about this unit. I think this could be an even better offensive line than what we saw last year. And last year's offensive line was damn good, one of the best offensive line groups in the Kirk Ferentz era. Not necessarily because, and I said this when I did their position preview last year, not necessarily because they had an elite, first-round draft pick mauler like a Riley Reif or a Brian Balaga or, Robert Galloway or Tristan Wirfs or Tyler Linderbaum. They didn't necessarily have that, even though Jennings Dunker would become the closest thing to that. But they just collectively had a ton of experience. The scheme was finally there for them to actually be successful. The play calling was actually there for them to be successful. And, they had a fantastic season. They still had talent. I mean, Connor Colby and Mason Richmond being drafted, shows that. But I'm talking about, like a day one, first day draft pick, first rounder. They didn't necessarily have that. So I'm excited about this group. This is kind of why I wanted to finish with them as the last position group on the offense because it's the best coming into the season, and this is what is going to set up the entire success or lack thereof, but hopefully the success of this Iowa Hawkeye offense. There's some other names, there's some younger guys that I could mention, just to kind of, I think Kanan Leonard is a name to watch. He's a big guy. I remember when he was being recruited, his brother went to Illinois, just a big 6'8" guy, played basketball, he's got NFL size. He's Robert Galloway type, Galloway-esque. He's that gargantuan. But by the way, guys, have you guys seen Jennings Dunker? I mean, that guy is massive. I mean, that dude, he's NFL size. I mean, you just look at him and he screams Big Ten, Midwest, Mauler. I mean, so George Barnett has recruited the position well. Lot of talent. This recruiting class is the exact same. Matter of fact, I think I'm just going to pull it up just really quickly to end this video, just to show you guys how well he's recruited. Now, obviously, there's been some misses, with injuries and various things like that. But this offensive line for this class has a 4-star high, and this is for 247 Sports. I pull up on 3. High 3-star, 89, 89, 90, 88, 88. I mean, guys with major offers across the entire country. Last year, as I wait for... Last year, Iowa did unfortunately lose out on Joey Van Wetzinga. He followed his brother. Looks like he wanted to play tight end / possibly defensive line. He no longer saw the plan that Iowa saw for him. But it just shows still the success that Barnett has had in recruiting, and all the players seem to like him. They enjoy playing for him, and Logan Jones and Jennings Dunker directly said that is why they decided to return to Iowa, is because of George Barnett. So take that for what it's worth. Iowa landed high 3-star, 4-star Lucas Algier, legacy Hawkeye. Last year's offensive line haul maybe wasn't the best. Simply because the year before it was so good, and they took 4 or 5 offensive linemen in that class. Will Nolan, 4-star offensive tackle out of Arlington Heights, Illinois. Cody Fox, but unfortunately he got injured again. It's Iowa really has had terrible luck with highly rated guys that they've gotten on the offensive line who, aren't even able to play a snap at Iowa before they get injured. Brody McCaslin, 89. Josh Janowski, center interior offensive line, 88. Very similar to Cade Pieper. So just a ton of talent, guys. All right, guys, that's going to do it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I cannot believe it, but the season's almost here. And I'm going to do my best to get through all the defensive line groups. Make sure you subscribe, like, comment, share. And last but not least, DBAP, don't be a pussy, Willow. In fact, your feelings, because your feelings just matter. Love you, Hawk fans. See you guys next time. Go Hawks. Bye-bye.